Some connections between people and their cats are extraordinary. In the little town of Windsor, Ontario, a remarkable tale about a woman and her cat was about to happen. One that would show everyone who witnessed it the deep bond possible between different species and how love can last through time. It was a peaceful afternoon in Windsor, Ontario, when Sophie Lane's world was forever changed. Sophie had spent most of her grown-up years in this quiet Canadian town, working as a librarian at the Windsor Public Library. She enjoyed the regular pattern of the seasons, the parks by the Detroit River, and the warm coffee shops throughout downtown. She often walked in Jackson Park, enjoying the colorful tulips in spring and the gentle noise of dropping leaves in autumn. But above all, she had cherished her cat, Julio. Sophie first encountered Julio 12 years before, on a sunny spring morning filled with flower scents and cheerful birdsong. Her closest friend Laura had convinced her to visit the Windsor Essex County Humane Society, just to browse. Sophie hadn't intended to adopt a pet that day, but destiny had other ideas. In the shelter, rolled up in a little basket hidden in a corner, was a small striped kitten with bright golden eyes and a lively spark in how he moved. When their eyes connected, something inside Sophie shifted. She reached into the basket, and the kitten immediately jumped into her arms, purring so strongly it made the shelter staff chuckle. The sensation of that warm, vibrating small body against her chest remained in her memory forever. Sophie realized, in that exact moment, that they belonged together. She called him Julio, after the clever old explorer in her favorite childhood book, The Journeys of Julio. Through the years, Julio became Sophie's dearest companion. He would wait by the window each evening, watching for her car with steady patience. He would welcome her at the door, circling her legs and making happy noises. At night, he would curl up on her pillow, purring gently as she read books under the golden glow of a reading lamp. Weekends were their special moments, lazy mornings spent snuggled on the couch, with Julio's gentle breathing matching the rain tapping on the windows. Sophie cared for Julio with all the love of a true friend. She gave him quality food, brushed his striped fur until it gleamed, and took him for yearly health checks without fail. Following the shelter's advice, she also had a microchip placed under Julio's skin when he was still small, a tiny measure of protection for the future. But no safety step could ready her for what would occur. One cool October day, when Julio was about 5 years old, Sophie was tending her small backyard garden. The air was crisp, the leaves were golden, and the smell of wood smoke drifted through the neighborhood. She had left the screen door slightly open to bring in some pots, just for a moment. When she turned back, Julio was gone. At first, she wasn't concerned. He had wandered into the yard before and always returned after a few minutes. But as minutes became hours and the sun sank behind the trees, fear gripped her heart. Her hands trembled as she called his name into the cooling evening air. She looked through every alley, every street, shouting his name until her voice broke. She hung posters on telephone poles, handed out flyers, and checked every shelter within 50 miles. She informed the Windsor Essex County Humane Society and kept her microchip information updated carefully in case someone ever scanned him. Weeks turned into months. Sophie wouldn't give up. Each night she placed a small dish of food outside her door. Each morning she checked shelters and online listings. But there was never any sign of Julio. Seeing the untouched food in the morning broke her heart all over again each day. The first Christmas without him was terrible. She placed a small ornament with his name on the tree, a tiny silver bell tied with a blue ribbon, and sobbed herself to sleep under the twinkling lights. Friends tried to comfort her, suggesting she should get another cat, but Sophie couldn't bring herself to replace him. Years went by. The pain lessened but never disappeared. She moved to a new house nearer to the city center but kept her old phone number working. A small part of her, weak but persistent, still believed Julio might return someday. Sometimes, on rainy nights, she would dream of him appearing on her doorstep, wet but alive, and she would wake with tears in her eyes. Then, 7 years later, on a dreary March morning, Sophie's phone rang. The person on the other end was from the Windsor, Essex County Humane Society. They had found a cat. An old striped cat, roughed up and thin, discovered wandering near an empty lot on the edge of town. The staff had thought he was just another nameless stray, until they scanned his microchip. And there it was, Julio, registered under Sophie Lane's name and still connected to her old working phone number. Sophie froze. Tears filled her eyes. Could it really be true? After 7 long years? Without waiting another second, she grabbed her coat and hurried to the shelter. The sky outside was releasing a light mist of rain, but Sophie didn't notice. Her heart was pounding too hard. As she drove, images of Julio filled her mind. The playful kitten, the loyal friend, the small body curled against hers at night. At the shelter, they guided her to a small, quiet room. Inside a cage, curled up in a tight ball, lay a weak, striped cat. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. His fur was thin and messy. One of his ears was torn, and his left eye was cloudy from an infection that wasn't treated. He looked much older, so delicate. But when she whispered, Julio, Zrania, the cat raised his head slowly. He sniffed the air, his good eye narrowing as if trying to catch a memory floating on the breeze. Sophie's scent reached him before her voice fully registered. A soft purr rumbled in his chest, shaky and weak, but filled with recognition. Sophie dropped to her knees, weeping. She reached through the bars. Julio, struggling to stand, wobbled toward her and pressed his skinny body against her hand, making a series of rough, broken sounds. The shelter workers stood quietly nearby, wiping their own tears. Carefully, Sophie lifted Julio into her arms. He rested his head against her, breathing in her scent, as if making sure it was real. They stayed that way for several long minutes, wrapped in a bubble of emotion that nothing could break. The vet warned her. Julio was very weak. He was severely malnourished, had serious dental problems, ongoing infections, and would likely need surgery for his eye. He would need lots of care and might not have much time left. But Sophie didn't hesitate. I'll do whatever it takes, she said simply. She completed the paperwork with trembling hands. Julio was going home. At her house, Sophie had prepared a special corner with a soft bed, a warming pad, and even the old toys she had carefully kept all these years. When she placed Julio gently onto the bed, he curled up with a deep, exhausted sigh, as if he had finally found peace at last. The first days were very difficult. Julio barely ate anything. Sophie fed him with a small syringe sometimes, helping him take tiny sips of special high-nutrition food. She gave him medicine, cleaned his infected eye, and sat with him for many hours, reading out loud just as she used to do when he was young. Her voice, once a source of comfort, now served as his lullaby through long, uncertain nights. Gradually, improvements began. Julio's fur started to regain its softness. His thin body filled out slightly. He began responding to Sophie's voice with tiny sounds and slow, steady purrs. One afternoon, she shook a crinkly toy ball she had kept all those years, and Julio's ears twitched slightly. With great effort, he batted at it, showing a small glimpse of his old playful spirit returning. But the marks of his long, difficult journey remained. Loud noises made him jump and hide under the couch quickly. Sudden movement startled him badly. Sophie learned to move very gently, speak very softly, and give him endless patience. She placed small nightlights around the house to prevent shadows from frightening him in the darkness. In those early weeks, Julio followed her everywhere. When she cooked, he sat right by her feet, his presence like a quiet prayer. When she read books, he lay pressed closely against her side. Even when sleeping, he would wake up and check if she was still nearby, feeling safe only when he could touch her hand or her clothes. His need for her was a deep, desperate thing, and Sophie gave him all the reassurance he so badly needed. Just when everything seemed to be improving, a small, unexpected event disrupted their fragile new peace. One afternoon, as Sophie cleaned around the kitchen, Julio let out a sharp cry and collapsed. His body shook violently, with foam appearing at the corners of his small mouth. "Julio!" Sophie dropped the kitchen cloth and rushed to his side quickly. "What's happening to you?" Her hands shook as she reached down for him. She fumbled for her phone, dialing the number incorrectly twice before connecting with the emergency animal clinic. "Windsor Emergency Pet Doctor, how can I help you today?" came a calm voice on the line. "My cat." Sophie's voice broke with fear. "He's having some kind of fit or seizure. He just collapsed. Please, I need help right now." "Bring him in immediately," the receptionist instructed her. "Dr. Werner is working today." Sophie wrapped Julio in his soft blanket and raced to her car outside. "Stay with me, Julio. Don't leave me now. Not again, please." At the clinic, Dr. Werner met her at the front door. "I'm Dr. Werner," he said, taking Julio carefully. "Tell me exactly what happened." "He was fine 1 minute," Sophie explained shakily. "Then he just cried out and collapsed suddenly. I found him 3 weeks ago after he was missing for 7 long years." "After a very long wait, Doctor." Werner returned with X-ray images. "Miss Lane, we've found something concerning," he explained, pointing to a bright white spot on the film. "There's a small metal fragment lodged deep in Julio's abdominal area." "Metal? Inside him?" Sophie stared in total disbelief. "Since he was a stray cat, he probably was injured years ago," Dr. Werner continued explaining. "His body encapsulated it with scar tissue, but it has recently shifted position, pressing against nerves and possibly his stomach wall." "Can you remove it?" Sophie asked, her throat feeling tight. "Yes, but I must be honest about the risks," Dr. Werner said seriously. "Julio is old and weakened from his years on the streets. The operation carries significant risks." "What if we don't operate?" Sophie asked very quietly. "If the metal piece shifts further, it could perforate his stomach, causing a severe infection," Dr. Werner explained. "Or it might press against blood vessels, causing more seizures or something worse." "Then you have to operate," Sophie decided immediately. "The mortality rate for this surgery, for a cat in Julio's condition, is about 40%. Dr. Werner warned her gently. "And without surgery?" Sophie asked quickly. "Without treatment." Dr. Werner paused briefly. "I don't think he would survive more than a few days at most." "Then we must operate," Sophie said firmly. "He didn't survive 7 years on the streets just to give up now." In the treatment room, Sophie visited Julio before his surgery. He lay in an oxygen chamber with an IV in his front leg. When she whispered his name softly, his ear twitched slightly. "Hey, sweet boy," she said very softly. "The doctors are going to help you get better. Be strong for me, please." Dr. Patel, the surgical specialist, entered the room. "The metal fragment is located near vital organs," she explained. "The procedure will be very delicate." "Will he survive this?" Sophie asked very directly. I cannot promise you that, Dr. Patel replied honestly. But he has a fighting chance, and if we succeed, we'll remove something that's probably caused him pain for many years. Fear gripped Sophie as she watched them take him away. Her heart pounded hard. The waiting room felt like a prison, each minute endless with worry and hope. She held Julio's old blanket close, crying and praying. Hours felt like forever. A nurse named Marcus provided updates. Dr. Patel found the fragment, he said first. Later, there were complications. Julio's blood pressure dropped, but Dr. Patel stabilized it. Sophie just nodded, too scared to ask more, too afraid to hear how close she might be to losing Julio forever. Finally, after what seemed like endless waiting, Dr. Patel emerged, still wearing her surgical cap, eyes tired but with a hint of a smile. The surgery was more complicated than we anticipated, she said, showing Sophie a container with a sharp metal piece. This was embedded deep in old scar tissue. It appears to be part of a car bumper. You removed it completely? Sophie asked, looking at the small metal fragment that caused so much suffering. Every bit, Dr. Patel said. We repaired the surrounding tissue. Fortunately, there was no perforation of the intestine. When can I see him? Sophie stood up immediately. He's in recovery now, Doctor, Patel said. You can see him briefly, but he's still under anesthesia. In recovery, Julio lay on a warming pad, connected to monitors. A patch of his belly was shaved, revealing a neat row of stitches. His breathing was steady. The next day is critical, Dr. Patel warned. But I'm optimistic. His vital signs are better than we expected. From then on, Julio seemed lighter in spirit. He moved a bit better, purred a bit louder. It was as if, with that old injury gone, he could begin to heal not just his body but his heart. Life grew good again. Sophie reconnected with old friends, smiled more at work, and even spent time with a kind man named Evan, who also helped animals. They would sit on Sophie's porch, drinking tea, while Julio slept in the sun near their feet. Julio, now an elderly wise cat, would greet her each night with a soft but clear meow. He would sit in her lap as she read, his good eye watching her with love, his paw sometimes touching her chest, feeling her heartbeat. His trust, once broken, had been gradually rebuilt, piece by piece. Each night, Sophie told him the same thing. You're safe now, you're home, you'll never be alone again. The future was uncertain, and Julio was elderly now, but she treasured every moment with him. Their bond had endured through hardship. Now they faced life together, their love only growing stronger with each challenge. Did you enjoy this story? Have you ever experienced the joy of seeing a beloved pet again after a long separation? Tell us in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and give us a like. Remember, love never gives up, and sometimes it even brings lost souls back together. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.